Page 121, but it's a supplementary. Okay, folks. We're now resuming our meeting and going into the changes to council funding and funding requests, which is on page 121, and we have the supplementary report. Has everybody got it?
Hold on a second. Sorry. My secondary document.
We can go through. He'd asked Karen, who's taking this?
It's Corin.
Corin. Corin. Board.
It's in here.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillors.
Just if we just could wait, make sure that Corin, everybody's got the supplementary report. We've got the everybody.
Is that the page?
No, it's in another document.
Please hold.
Yeah.
So it's not that. It's not that one. I think
It's a supplementary.
It's
a second one.
So on page 4.
Yes.
Of 16.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, Corin.
Gary.
Yeah, 121 in the main document.
Oh, he's got paper. I forgot.
Afternoon. So take the papers read. I will just spend a bit of time talking about the recommendations because there's quite a few of them there and they get a bit complex, so I'll just step through so that it's easily understood. So the first 7 recommendations there are notes, and they relate to items that are currently included in the LTP, and you heard submissions on during the process in terms of support of those. Then when we come to number 8, this is the first thing we're asking you to agree on, and this is around the grants funding and the council's preferred option, and so that's agrees to point 1 or point I, is that all the funding goes into an annual contestable fund, and that was the preferred option that was in the consultation. Or to proceed with an alternative option, which is to maintain the existing council funding arrangement. If you choose to go with the preferred option that you consulted on, then that the total amount is contestable is decided by the Awards and Grants Committee in September as part of the annual grants round. If, however, you go or choose the alternative option, there's a few subsequent decisions that you then need to make that follow from that because of the process that we've just been through. So that would bring us to number 10, which is to agree that the funding decisions around the groups that were part of the 3-year funding from the previous LTP would go to an Awards and Grants Committee to be held in July to make a decision on those particular ones. And that's because they would be left hanging and then a decision needs to be made quickly around how you want to proceed with those. Also, we didn't hear from all of them in terms of the submissions back, so because there would be a change from the third option that was consulted on, we are recommending that happens in July, and all of the people or organisations that have previously been on 3-year agreements are given the opportunity to be part of that process. If you do that, and choose that option, then the next thing that follows is we're asking to agree that the funding pool for those organisations, so that's the ones from 10, remains at the previous level from the previous LTP. That would be the 316,300. But also noting that during this LTP process, some of those organisations have requested an uplift or an increase in amounts. And if we follow that process, that would mean that the September annual grant pools, and that will be the Wellbeing Fund that you're used to from the past, would be at $85,000 because the rest of that funding would be, is sitting with those original ones from the LTP. Also, would then agree that Wings over Wairarapa are advised to apply to the Events Fund if they wish to apply for funding. Noting that the status quo would maintain a multi-year agreement for Destination Wairarapa, and that level of funding would be reviewed when the current arrangement expires in September next year, so 2025. And also agree that if during the July process there is any money left over from that 318,000, i.e. the Awards and Grants Committee don't choose to award it all to those organisations, that then becomes part of the September wellbeing grant. And finally, that agree that applications from organisations that were new in the process, so we're talking Five Towns Trails, the Victoria University, New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, and Wairarapa Advocacy Group, be considered as part of that contestable round in September.
Okay.
Questions?
Questions, Councillor Johnson?
It's very confusing, isn't it? Just a couple of questions.
Sure.
We're obviously going to do these individually, are we?
No, it's just a straight recommendation, is that right?
So you've got, the first seven are noting.
No, it's,
Then, so there is a decision at 8 that you would need to make, because depending on which decision you make at 8, the following ones from 10 down actually do or do not apply, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Okay. My other two questions are, just because I'm trying to be clear. In number 10, where you've got 14 organisations bullet pointed, if the agreement was to maintain the existing process, to move forward, are we still saying that we agree to fund all existing 14? Because some might want to continue with funding, some might want to not continue with funding.
So what we're recommending is that July is the opportunity for them to be in that process. Some could choose not to be, and the Awards and Grants Committee can choose in that July process the level to which they want to fund those organisations.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think the question is, just while it's the same thing, I guess the question is, if we said we want to continue with the funding arrangement as we currently do, which is some are contestable, but we can have a 1 or a 3-year MOU, right? If we continue with that, I notice that the pool reduces by 5% anyway, total pool, right? So we can't give the same money to everyone because we've got less money. But we don't, if we're saying we'll continue as we are, we're not actually saying we'll continue as we are with you and you and you and you.
No.
We still have the opportunity to decide who we fund, correct?
Indeed, because
But we can do 1 year contestable, or we could do an MOU.
true, yeah. So there's still the point where the Awards and Grants Committee makes that decision.
But we can, because I think some of us through feedback may have determined that we can't just look at this every 12 months because it's not efficient use of time and it's not giving some people security.
Yeah.
So, but we still have flexibility over who we choose to support or not.
Absolutely, council always has that.
I'm just checking that, because I don't want it to signal to these people, yay, there's no decision to be made. We're actually making a funding decision, not a particular organisation decision today, correct?
Yeah. So you're effectively making a decision of whether you go with the preferred option that was in the consultation, which is move it all into that annual contestable, or not do that, and then there's a series of things that need to happen afterwards, and one of them is then to decide what happens with that group, hence the July.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Commissioner. So with the first option, the third option, and the other option is it's the same amount of money we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, but it just means if we take the third option, everyone comes in September, they present their case, and then we go with,
That's correct.
based on their cases, we make our decisions. So no one's being excluded from anything from the first option?
No, the only difference for them is that group who have been on the 3-year, and we heard from some of them during the submissions that their preferred is obviously to stay in that there is a change of state there for them, and because of the change in cycle, like 3 months difference between July and September, there is an impact for them in terms of funding.
But all they essentially have to do is come to council, to our committee with a strong case and present it yearly, once a year, and they'll be fine. Like, actually, we will hear their case, of course, and make decisions here.
That's correct, yes.
Councillor Lennox.
Yeah, just in regards to the notes, so, just so I'm clear, we note them today and they will get brought to the council again at a later date for discussion?
No, so you're noting that they're in the LTP, so they would sit there in the LTP as provisions for those particular activities.
Okay, so then, my next question is, would you have to approve them as projects from council?
Well,
Doesn't mean that ultimately going to happen.
They'll be different for each of them, right? So you've heard the submissions, say for example, from Golden Chairs, and that is a project which will take place in one of our facilities, right? So there will be a process that goes with that and a project. So there will be other steps along the way, but you are noting that there is that allocation of $1 million in year 2 to contribute to that project from council.
What's the difference between noting and agreeing though?
Yeah.
That's what Stella's trying to say.
Yep.
Are you agreeing to it, or are you just noting it?
You agree when you adopt the LTP?
So you're agreeing to it?
Yeah.
You've already agreed to it as part of the LTP budgets that went out to consultation.
Yeah, but also too, then we had submissions and then we...
Councillor
And also
Goodwin.
we didn't know some of them were in there.
Councillor Lennon, Councillor Goodwin, Councillor Lennon.
Are you on the second question, Brent? Well, because I'm just clarifying 1 to 7.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Yeah.
So, those things have been, those items 1 to 7 were included in the long-term plan consultation, Karen. I'm just wondering, some of those weren't brought to my memory to our attention as a council, is that correct? Prior to the long-term plan?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So do you have an example?
Memorial Park.
Takara Reserve?
Right. So Takora Reserve, yeah. So that was in the level of service conversation. So so they're pieces of funding. We knew that some of them that there was something that would come to the LTP, but there had been no previous discussion. We just knew that something was coming as part of the LTP process. You remember with Memorial Park that Whatever Bush did come and talk to council in a workshop and indicate that they were intending to put something into the LTP.
Yeah, so, excuse me, I'll just finish. So I'm kind of interested in that process. Can those things just be slipped in at the last minute and go out for consultation, and now you're asking us to approve them?
So they weren't slipped in.
Some of them were brought to our attention, like Memorial Park, for example, but there were differing views on it, and nothing was decided, but they're now here in the long-term plan, which kind of surprises me in my naivety or ignorance, that they're here all of a sudden.
Noted. I mean, council still
Was there a process around each of these to get them to this point, or do they just appear like this miraculously now?
So they were based on provisional sums that were put into the LTP in anticipation of something coming through the process. So I mean, council still has the opportunity to not include those if it chooses not to, which is why we put them in for you to note today.
So just, thanks. Just to clarify, for example, the 1.7 million for the kids' own playground replacement, I don't feel comfortable about that committing to that yet because I really have, apart from the presentation, I have had no other information around that. So that one would be something I would feel a bit strange about. A few of these other ones, yeah, I don't, maybe I'm with you, Tom, on this one. I don't really recall.
I think where the confusion's coming
I think
from is the
yeah.
word, and I think Tom picked up, is the word between notes and
And agrees,
read.
yeah.
Can I just respond that we have discussed these as part of those service level discussions, and then following Christmas, we went through the line by line on what those facilities budgets were, and if there was an indication that we would support it subject to strategy, because we talked about having a sports strategy and a playground strategy, we've had to put the funding in the LTP in case this is what we decide to do, subject to that. So that's why they're in there. They've not come from nowhere. They were part of those discussions, but making sure
Which discussions,
that they were
Karen, sorry?
the discussions that we had prior to Christmas. We had 2 workshops before Christmas, and then we had, remember over Christmas we talked about some reprioritisation, and then we sat down and we had those effectively the line by lines that we went through about what we should put in and what we shouldn't put in. So from those discussions we put them in the budget, and they may be subject to a playground strategy or a sports strategy, but if they're not in the budget, then we can't then put them in if they're huge sums of money. So, subject to the strategy, they may not be achieved through this LTP.
So just because the funding's here doesn't mean that it's going to go ahead. I'd expect a business case around the
Well, it's not
parks.
agreed, it's
I
not,
would
it's not
expect,
agreed.
we will bring that back, so.
We're just agreeing to the provision if they do go. Agree?
So
But in
none
actual
of
fact, the word notes is quite right, really, isn't it? I mean, it's just being noted.
That's the clarification we want.
But if
We're
you-
noting it, we're not agreeing to it, there's going to be more to it,
That's right.
but we're putting it in there because if we don't, we can't.
But if you really don't want to support it at this stage,
Now's the time.
now's the time.
And it is council's share of the funding for any of those. So the War Memorial Stadium, we've said $1 million will be available to the Golden Shears. If their project is $3 million, they have to find the
So it's
balance.
conditional.
So it's a funding provision that is indicating there is support from the council, but the other group who is promoting this, and the Rotary Club for Kids Zone is the same. We've made a funding provision for our share. We haven't said it's our project. We haven't put in the external funding. So that's what is the indication in terms of the dollars that are allowed.
And I'd be comfortable with that, but it's not quite the wording here. And if we had similar wording to that, and these things will be considered on their merits, we'll put aside funding for them, but subject to those conditions or whatever your word was, plus it meeting council's approval at the time.
Well, even
When
subject
we
to
discuss them, when we look at their business plans, for example.
Doesn't the word provision take that into account?
Well, not might yet.
I'm not saying it, I'm just saying, does it? Does that one word, does that cover most of those bases?
So maybe another, to add to the resolution, is that point 1 to 7 is subject to council approval. Somehow.
Because the problem I have with that is that, the Memorial Stadium and Kids Zone Playground, I know some people will say it's only 3 million, but it's actually quite a lot of money. And for instance, Memorial Park is split between years 1 and 4. Funds are tough.
There's not a decision, obviously, from what Paul said.
No, but you're still rating for it. You're rating, if you make a provision.
You're only rating on it if you call it on it. It's not loan funding.
Yes. You're making provision to take the money off the ratepayers. I'm suggesting, for instance, War Memorial Park, Memorial Park, could be left for 3 years for the XLTP.
That's another discussion there, though, isn't it?
Subject to council approval, I really like.
So you're going to take the money and...
You don't take the money though. This is you only call upon money when the business case is approved and endorsed by council, and at the time that it's needed, we draw that down off reserves. That's normally how it will be. So it's not going
year
to...
1, for instance, for Memorial Park, are you making provision for some expenditure on Memorial Park that you'll be taking off the road?
Can I just say that provision within the works program is for change around female and male toilets within the facility, which I would consider quite a necessity here at the moment.
And earthquake strengthening as well.
And it's from depreciation funds. So there's no ratepayer direct contribution, it's in council reserve. The impact becomes the extra depreciation in future years.
Okay, Tim.
Thanks. I'm going to need a lot of support as head of water grants for this because I find it incredibly confusing. I wonder if I'm the only one. But just what you were saying, Karen, so the general discussion about strategy at the end of last year allows quite specific stuff to appear here.
So my recollection wasn't a general discussion, it was very much that we would support these projects in
These specific
isolation.
ones, because I don't recall that at all
Yeah.
around Kingston Playground.
Definitely the Memorial Park, I remember the conversation afterwards.
Anyway, we can get to the wording that Tim's suggesting. Tim, what are you suggesting?
Can you finish your answer, Karen?
Sorry.
So my recollection of the discussions were that we did talk about all of these individual projects, but there was a strong feeling that we needed to do various strategies to determine what needed to happen and when, and if it really did need to happen. So it was all subject to that work being undertaken. So we've provided for this as a worst case scenario, so it's in the long-term plan. If it does go ahead, you've got the funding, you can draw down on the funding, you've got the approval to go ahead on that. But if the strategy says, actually no, we'd rather have one big playground rather than sort of, three smaller playgrounds, well then we don't need to deliver on that, because that's what the long-term plan is. It's an intention, but if things happen, we don't have to do that.
I'm so confused.
I got a question.
This is unfortunately very confusing because we have it, if we do revert back, then there are a number of different components that we need to sort out. So we just work our way through it.
I'm happy with the word notes, because normally when we note a report, like in infrastructure or something, we're just noting the contents of the report, we're not actually agreeing to it. So I'm happy with the word notes, but I think I'd really like it if it's possible to add in subject to council approval, because then we have the real discussion that obviously is something we haven't had. But I've just got a question. My next question is, why isn't Judd's Road in here then? Because Judd's Road crossing is something we put in the LTP in case we have to pay for it, but hopefully we're going to secure funding for it and we don't have to pay for it. But to me, wouldn't that be a change to council funding and funding request?
No, because these were in response to those agreements and to the grant funding rather than our operational funding.
And these specifically made submissions to the council, so this is in response to the submission. So there was no submissions on Judd's
Road made a
Road.
submission, it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other things too, I'm sorry, but I have to agree with Brent on this one, because I want to write that down. But the Ngāti Tokoro Reserve, that was the first I've ever heard of it the other day. So even though we have a urban parks budget, remember I emailed you to say, is it in the plan, is it in our budget? So to me, on these ones, there does need to be further discussion, and I'm glad that there will be.
So the word, sorry, Miriam, I know you're coming, but just need to get this clear. The word subject to council approval goes where?
I think we need to expand on that, because otherwise it's a bit of a contradiction. That we've included it, but we haven't included it. So you are approving it to go into the long-term plan, but that is subject to further scoping and final council approval of each.
Business cases and final approval, something like that.
Yeah.
Could I just make a recommendation though, so 5 and 6 are very operational things in the facilities and open spaces budget. There's a number of things on an annual basis that happen as part of the maintenance and project work at Riversdale, and the Solway, that money was already anticipated, that work needed to be done by the facilities team as well. So those ones, my recommendation is we wouldn't want to be bringing those back to you for discussion, they're very operational level. The other ones, it's a different space.
But is it, for instance, the Riversdale one, when I read that they wanted to bring the toilet back onto the car park because they thought the pipe, having a pipe running across the waterway posed danger in case the pipe broke. You know, maybe in 50 years when the pipe's getting old, but I found that a total unconvincing argument. We actually in Masterton run a lot of our pipes across waterways, and it's actually quite an old technology. It's been around for thousands of years, and that's not a good enough reason. From memory, it's 300,000 to disconnect that pipe, bring it back, build a new toilet. When times are tough, I don't call that urgent. If the pipe, the assets people, if the pipe's probably going to last for the next 5 years, I'd like to suggest, for instance, that element be delayed.
So we're not suggesting in this that any of those individual pieces will or will not happen. That's the Facilities and Open Spaces team working on that part of the town, like they do on any other part of the town, looking at what needs to be done, listening to the community, and making judgment calls on that. And those sorts of things certainly get taken into account in terms of whether it's something that needs to be replaced, as well as community sentiment as well.
But by whom, Corey?
By the Facilities and Open Spaces, so ultimately sitting under MAS, but so Ian is the Facilities and Open Spaces
So it might not
manager.
necessarily, for example, that toilet might not come back to our
Depends,
discussion.
yeah, but if it fell as part of a bigger initiative that did need like council engagement approval, then it may well. But if there was an issue, say the toilet at Riversdale became a health and safety issue and they needed to act, they would do that. It would be in the reporting back to council so that there was visibility that it happened. So currently under the Infrastructure and Services Committee, you would keep that. So the information absolutely would come back to you, but it just depends on whether it's an operational thing or if it's more strategic and larger area.
But on the surface of that argument, and I do emphasise the surface, it seems a fairly solid argument to argue against that being in business as usual, that Riversdale Beach funding.
I think again, I understand what you're saying. Again, I think so. There's a whole lot of activities that the team do on a daily basis at Riversdale, and it's not practical to have the team coming back to council for each of those activities. So we need to find a line, which is in effect what we're trying to do here in terms of noting. So yes, we heard from the Riversdale community, and there was stuff in there, and we're just noting that we have an allocation in the budget to do stuff at Riversdale, but it's not asking council or saying to council that we're going to do everything that's in submission from Riversdale or anywhere else.
It's just, again, I'm just trying to get my head around the consistency of spaces. So how does that compare to Coburn Street and Columbia Road, for example, when the stuff wasn't done there? It probably should have, and it only got done because it came to council.
Yeah. So it'll sit. I mean, it all sits under MAS now. Obviously, sitting in a slightly different area in terms of. So a lot of the activity we're talking about at Riversdale is sitting on the open spaces side. Coburn obviously is about infrastructure, etc. But I mean, in the Coburn area, if there's tree planting or any of that sort of stuff, then the team again.
No, normally I agree. It makes sense what you're saying, but in this case, there's a potential $300,000 spend that might not be very wise at all, and those of us who are really keen to limit our spend where it's not essential, that's of concern to us.
Yeah, just to add to that, within Maz's team, we'd be getting a consultant or somebody to look at whether or not we can sweep the assets, whether it's absolutely imperative or a priority, It's not just because it's there we're going to go and do it. It's very, that happens with roading too, whether or not we can leave the roads to wear down further or, so I think, probably just to give a bit of reassurance is that just because the funding's there doesn't mean that we're just going to spend it. There's going to be an exercise of looking very closely at all those assets and whether or not there are alternate solutions, whether there are more affordable options, whether it has to even be done at all. That goes into many of the projects and we put forward. So I can give you the assurance here, Councillor Tom.
Councillor Tudor.
Have you said any project we can draw down in the budget? So is there a figure that we've allocated, a big pool of money that we'll draw down from?
Only if it's within the LTP and based, are you talking about these items here?
Yes.
Yes, so an example, item 1 through to 5, or even 4, those items there, we have a placeholder of money which we put into the LTP, and essentially from there, just because it's a placeholder doesn't mean that we're going to spend that money. Then it comes back through a process of approval to ensure that it stacks up, that if it needs to come to council for a decision, it will do. So I would expect, the likes of, say, the Kids Zone Playground, that we would have a presentation from Rotary Club, the council, a paper of what our contribution would be, a timeline of how it would be project managed, etc. Any interim sort of solutions that are put in place to make it risk, all that would form a paper for approval. So, but in regards to a $40,000, which you were saying, Corin, Solway Reserve, that's something that has even been talked about before now, before the LTP. I probably expect that we get on with those sorts of things.
On that,
Which is music to some ears.
But do you, you talked about the golden shares earlier, or was it?
So there's a placeholder of $1 million, but we wouldn't spend that $1 million until it came back to council. It's just signaling the commitment.
Councillor Goodwin, then Councillor Helena.
I don't know if it needs to be threshed out today, but I do think there needs to be a bit more talk about what you suggested and it seems that some projects for a few $100K can slide by without councillor input, or $40K, and I'm not arguing against the 4. But I remember a councillor wanted to plant plant holes in Queen Street. I don't know, go and get a notice of motion. Which, that's, well, you don't, but you weren't here. But the rest of you remember it. That is just ridiculously inconsistent. And I do take some confidence. I did talk about some other partners with Naz, and she was much more welcoming than go put a notice of motion. So it's a little bit of a bit too arbitrary, I think, in the past.
Well, yeah.
Just my thoughts.
I can only influence the future under my leadership of how we operate.
Councillor Helena.
But David can change the past. If you two combine them.
No, well, certainly clarity around what that looks like going forward would be brilliant. Corin, probably not long after when we were consulting on the when we were discussing the consultation document, I read down the list of items that were going to be included in the long-term plan, and I didn't recall them all to memory, unfortunately, but one I did recall, which I didn't think we were decided on as a council, was the athletics track. And I see that's in there, and I'm wondering why it's not in here, in this 1 to 7.
Because there was no submission, as far as I'm aware, on so these are only in response to the submissions that we heard as part of the process. And again, yes. So there's in the LGP there's the provision around that stuff for the track. council will still need to make its decision
Yes,
as to what
as we will on
happens with
these.
the track. But yeah, that is specifically because we heard as part of the consultation.
Understand.
Councillor Turton?
We've talked about 1 to 6 being, to me, the top priority. But what about the rest of them? And who chose those 6?
So they're the ones that were submitted on as part of the long-term plan. So we heard about those as part of the submissions as the long-term plan, which is what they're there.
But I heard about going to free ambulance. I heard about
Yeah, that's the next.
That's in the next section of the 3-year grants, where council either makes the decision to go.
We're going to move to
forward
that,
and
to number 8. We need to decide on number 8, one or the other.
Can I move a motion, or is the timing okay for that, or not?
Yep.
Okay, I'd like to move a motion that, where's it gone? We proceed with the alternative option to maintain existing council funding arrangements.
Could we hear that again, sorry?
It's on the first page, Tom, it's got a number 8, there's two there, and I'm going for the second one. Proceeds with the alternative option to maintain existing council funding arrangements.
What's your reason for that, please?
Because I think that there should be an option that people can have a 3-year MOU, given the submissions that we heard, where it would place staff in a vulnerable position as they wouldn't be able to make a commitment to staff, that some of their staff workforce might leave because they wouldn't have the surety of a position, plus many of those people that present to us are a wee bit hand to mouth anyway, and it means that they can have business plans and know what they're doing for a 3-year period. I mean, as I understand it, the awards and grants committees still have the opportunity to decide whether they continue with 3-year funding and who for, but I prefer to have the option.
Gary, can I come back to that,
Yeah.
Councillor Beggs, but did we decide on 1 to 7? The wording of the noting, sorry?
You're gonna-
Just want to have that
So
confirmed.
we can put an extra resolution in here, which is,
So number 8.
what do we call that?
No, we're looking
No,
for
it's
one
the
that's
ninth.
One to seven.
Yeah, so we could put in number 8 after those
Oh, yeah.
and say that the resolutions 2 to 7, because one's just around the submissions, are subject to a business case and final council approval.
Awesome. I'd support we'll leave that, whatever it is.
Okay,
So do
so,
that, Tom?
Yes, thank you.
Should we need to get that, or will that come in the final?
Unless you want to take out number 5 around that $40,000.
Well, yeah, so, yeah, I mean, my recommendation would be to take out 5 and 6. And that's based on the fact that a lot of that is very operational in those areas, a lot of it's maintenance. I don't think it's practical to have that coming back for decision.
cost us
There will be
money.
information coming to council as part of that as well, but certainly the others like.
So we could move 5 and 6 up under 1. So we've got just the notes, and then those 2 are notes. And then the remainders are subject to the business case and final council approval.
Sounds good.
Harriet's on
Tapping away.
Very clever woman, Harry.
Thanks for remembering it, Tom.
With the point made by Bex, this isn't the only source of funding that these people rely on, is it, these organisations? And my recall was that the decision was made for 1 year for accountability, and it is, once a year is still not that often.
well, you don't have to support it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's just, I'm just responding to that, like,
I think
The way, and it's probably not what you intended, but it was like their hands are foot, hands are mouth, because of us. We're the one determining factor as to whether or not they survive, but we're just a tiny part of it.
Well, some we were a big part,
Yeah.
like Destination Wairarapa.
I think one of the things that come through to us, Bex explained, was that for some of these organisations, like just National Records, a particular one, but also the Community Trust,
We can,
that they actually employ staff over a period of time. If they only get 1 year funding, there's very uncertainty with staff. They need to know that, staff need to know the certainty to stay in the job.
But you know, they would be assured that if they're delivering at the level we expect from them, then they will, that fund, I'd be surprised if that funding could continue.
Are there
It's happened before though.
are there KPIs wrapped around an 3-year funding arrangement?
Yes, so as part of the funding arrangement, so when they submitted into the previous LGP, they articulated what they wanted the money for, and that was, council made the decision based on what they said they were going to do, and that was written into those funding arrangements.
So they're accountable?
Yeah.
3 years is a very long time.
Can I just say,
Yes,
just around those, all the community organisations, which one's listed, but a lot of them actually like us, have a 3-year plan, 10-year plan, and an annual plan. So for them to lose that funding to annually, they can't actually secure their plan, they can't cement it in place if they're actually unsure as to if they're going to be viable or not in a year's time.
And you can still choose to or not to.
Correct.
It's still through the awards and grants.
Committee, they still decide.
So the decision's still.
Still up in the air.
Ultimately, yeah.
I feel like if something's a close call, these organisations, from my perspective, will be far more likely to get the funding if it was on a yearly basis than if it was on a 3-yearly basis.
But
Do you
if
see my point I'm making here? 3 years was a long time, I'm not sure. 1 year, okay, we'll give them the opportunity to prove it, come back again next year.
But if you think somebody's not living up to that, you don't, the people who are on 3-year agreements now, you don't have to agree for them to be on a 3-year agreement next time. All it's doing, isn't it, just giving us the facility to have a 1 year or a 3-year. We might choose not to.
They might talk to you though, wouldn't they?
What?
Send in their annual reports to your contract compliance and stuff like that.
Okay, can we do that? Tom?
Yeah, I sort of pick up on Councillor Tim. But I think it's some of those organisations where the outcomes are, the social outcomes, but they're kind of ambiguous. I think a 1 year funding agreement is a mechanism to make them more accountable and focused. However, there's some there, I agree, Bex, where they're supporting the lives of others, I'd kind of like to support them. For example, Y Waste or Wellington Free or Life Flight, because people's lives are relying on those organisations, whereas the others, there's a degree of ambiguity, and I kind of like the accountability in those organisations, provided we can set up very clear outcomes for them. I kind of like that sharpness in some of those other spaces. That's my thought.
I guess my thing is there's consistency if it's 1 year, and who's to decide the ambiguity between one and another?
Just my reasoning was around, are they providing for people's lives? And
I think at the end of the day that the boards and grants are still going to have the say on it. So I'll put a motion here from Bex that we proceed with the alternative motion to maintain existing council funding arrangements. I have a show of hands. All in favour, please say aye.
Could we just have clarity on that first, Gary? The existing arrangements mean 3 years for them and 1 year for them.
No, not for who.
No,
It's
we're
just you
still
have the opportunity
Oh.
to do 3 or 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not choosing them.
We're not trying. Thank you.
Against?
Against.
Oh, I thought you said again.
No, 4, we've had the 4.
Okay.
Again?
Can we do the 4 again?
No, let's do the 4 again. Okay, the 4 again. All in favour? Against? Carried. We then move to 9 through to 15. We go right through to, do we?
Before we do that, can we just agree that you're happy with
Yes.
the changes?
Oh, okay. Are we happy with the changes, folks?
No, it's 47.
Which is number 8.
Yep.
Yep.
For that?
Do we need to move that?
Yeah, just for
I
So
thought,
I thought the Kids Own Playground had already submitted a business case. It was a huge document.
They submitted to us.
it's a proposal.
They've submitted their business case, but it hasn't come to council
We
as a
haven't had a chance.
process.
Councillor Tudor.
I thought Riversdale was being taken out.
Yep, so they've moved up
It
to
is.
2 and 3.
Everybody happy with that? Somebody prepared to move through that process?
I'll move.
I move Councillor Byers, second Councillor Lena. All those in favour? Thank you. We then go, can we take from 9 to 15 then?
So you,
10 is the,
yeah, so you've just passed the alternative, so that will bring you on to 10.
Correct.
Is it still 10 in the new number?
yeah.
No, we had
yeah.
everyone.
Well,
It's now 11, isn't it?
It's now 11.
It's now 11 and on up here because we added in something. 10 on your sheet becomes 11. 10 on your sheat is now 11 in the official record.
And
And
page
that,
5 on my computer,
Yes,
or
yeah.
127 on
Five.
his paper.
could well be. So this is the follow-on, which has you agreeing that the Awards and Grants Committee meets in July
Yes.
to consider those organisations which were and have been previously on the 3-year agreement. So it's the flow-on from that decision.
Can I still, where do I sit out right to vote for the last motion? Can I still vote on this one?
It's a separate resolution, yeah.
So we agree on
and
the.
as I understand it, these organisations would be invited to make submission to that July process.
And they may choose not to? or
They may choose not to, but there aren't others outside of that list who we would be likely to invite. And that's why we've separately specified Wings over Wairarapa in a different process and Destination Wairarapa in a different process.
Because they previously were on a 3-year.
Yeah, they were listed in the consultation document with these ones.
So the idea is to move all these together from 10 through 15,
Yep, we can do the 16 on the screen.
or 16 on the screen. Oh, 16 on the screen, yeah. Somebody prepared to move that?
I can move it because I understand it.
Second, Councillor Goodman.
I understand it, so I'm going to move it.
5, 6 trails.
Do you want to come sit over here?
Not today, though.
Is it discussion, Councillor?
No, thank you. So that's including the Five Towns Trail Water Advocacy Group?
Yeah.
Kip, just on that Water Advocacy Group, I'm confused what they think their role is, or what's their role with Wairarapa Water Resilience Group. Can anyone enlighten me on that, and do we need both?
I can, and also Councillor David might want to. So the Wairarapa Water Advocacy Group is led by Simon Casey at the moment, which is more approaching central government to fast-track water resilience. In particular, the Wakamokau Dam, I think it was the driver there. That is separate to the Wairarapa Water Resilience Strategy, where I suppose the energy of the region is focusing on that in particular, where it's a more coordinated type of response. So separate groups with separate, the common thing is water at the end of the day in the space.
Yeah, and it's important, I think, too, when we're looking at those last three, that all we're doing really is agreeing to refer their applications through to the contestable funding round to be considered by the Awards and Grants Committee. We're not saying yes or no.
It's purely because they applied as part of, it's purely because they applied as part of the Elton
purely
We're
so,
just
yeah.
referring it to the Awards and Grants round.
Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
I've just got a question. On that page, we talk about 5, we talk about point 11, that there is 316,300 and then there's 85, right? You add those two together and that's 401. And yet further down the page it says we've got a total funding pool of 374. Why is one 401 and why is one 374?
Where's the 374?
The 374 was part of the
Here, on the next page.
consultation information.
Well, we just say we reduce fund to 374, but the other two add up to 401. So if we've got another 20k to give away, am I okay with that? But I just don't understand why, what the difference
Oh, we might
Business
say.
one wrapper.
Yeah.
What's the reason?
Business wire wrapper wasn't included in that 374 figure previously.
Even though we're funding them with 30k?
We had them in a separate budget and weren't expecting them to be in a contestable fund.
Okay. So the 374 is correct?
The amount in the resolution is correct.
Agreed, at
401.
412.
Yeah.
401.
401.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to know what we're doing.
But remember that some of those groups applied for increases in funding.
Yes, I know.
So if you go beyond the envelope with the 3-year funding groups,
I know we haven't done enough money.
there's less in the rest of the pool.
Yeah.
And also, there's no funding allocated at this stage for five towns, is there?
No.
Hence the Victoria University.
I realise we need to give fewer people less money. But that's-
Or you can decide to increase the funding pool. This decision now, knowing that you've got all of that information in front of you.
So we
Yeah.
either, so you're saying we either have to constrain our budget and cut back, or just spend more?
Stop spending,
I think we
Brent.
need to
Is
stick
that-
with
is
what
that
we've
what
got
you're saying?
budgeted.
Let's keep it moving. So we have a motion. Lennox and Councillor Goodwin, seconded, that we go through from 10 to 6, is it 10 to 16? 11.
It'll be 11 to
17.
Now, I'm going to put that to the councillors. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Just a small point, but there's no 16 or 17 on my page.
Because we'll just amend it.
Okay, we now move to page 130. And again, there is a
We're up into supplementary now.
There is a supplementary, so the deliberations on the final financial implications, page 130, page 130.
Main document?
Yep.
And David Paris, I guess.
Yes. So this is the deliberations report around the financial implications of the submissions that were made on the consultation document. So the report's split into 3 parts. Firstly, the feedback on the financial information that was in the consultation document. So it's trying to summarise the themes and comments of the submitters. And then any feedback on user pays, user charges, increases and decreases in user charges. There are comments from feedback on those, and then a list of changes the staff have identified between March and now in terms of things changing and needing budget numbers tweaked and altered. So I'll step you through that third part in a sec. So the context around the financials is that the consultation document was supported by an infrastructure strategy, a financial strategy, asset management plans, assumptions of forecasting the financial statements, and council's draft budgets, both operational budgets and capital budgets. So they underpinned by service levels that the council decided on through 6 months of workshops, and the required debt needed to fund the capital projects and the rates levels that you were comfortable in terms of setting to consult on in the consultation document. All came out of the process supported by the financial information and financial model. So in terms of analysis, this submitters feedback is listed there. Affordability, rates increases and debt were common themes from the feedback from submissions. I won't read the document, I'll take that as read. Rural rates, another major submission point in terms of the increases being higher on rural properties than urban properties. So I've given some commentary around that and the valuation changes on rural properties. I've included in the report a comment that's come back from Quotable Value who provide the valuations. So that's to offset the implication that forestry purchases of farmland has driven up farm prices artificially. Quotable Value giving their view of how they've arrived at the valuation changes. And the revenue and financing policy is another area where it's part of the supporting documentation, and there were submissions that referred to the way the rates are allocated. And the council, in adopting the long-term plan, is adopting the revenue and financing policy as one of the supporting pieces of information. There's some information in the report around rate arrears. Councillor Goodwin's already jumped to that earlier in the meeting. That was asked for at the Audit and Risk Committee meeting to bring to deliberations as part of the context around the decisions you're making today. My conclusion around the current level of rate arrears is that we've still got a month to go. We are talking to ratepayers, contacting them, looking for them to make arrangements to bring their rates up to date. So the 1,111 properties at arrears at 26th of March, I believe that number will come down. It may not land back at the 745 that was 12 months ago, 30th of June 23. So I'm anticipating there will be an increase still, but it's still in that margin of between 3 and 4% of the total number of properties that have rate arrears. And if you're thinking about whether that's significant or not, that's the percentage of rates outstanding that we levy, not numbers of properties. Sorry, if you're doing it over numbers of properties, it's around 8.7% in urban residential.
Say that again, I didn't hear you.
8.7% of urban residential properties currently have rate arrears.
And 9%.
Gosh, 91% don't.
Feedback on the use of charges. Transfer station fees and e-waste charges were both commented on. The introduction of e-waste charges is included in the plan. The council last year decided not to go ahead with that. You asked them to be put in this time. There have been some people saying that they won't work, or they will result in people just throwing it out in their waste that goes to landfill because it doesn't incur a separate fee. There are some submitters around building consent fees and charges, swimming pool inspection fees. Housing for the elderly is the other area where we specifically consulted with the residents of Panama Village, looking for their feedback around the 18 to 19% increase in rents that is proposed in the plan. That's around a $20 a week increase, and there's a second increase in year 2, bringing the rental income from that activity closer to where the council indicated it needed to be in its revenue and financing policy. So reducing the ratepayer subsidy, increasing the user component of the income for the housing for the elderly activity. So the feedback is that the residents gave is included in the document, where they've suggested between 10 and 15 as a comfortable. I think I'll leave it there, Your Worship, for the time being, and then I can talk to the A to Q list of changes that are on pages 10 to 12. And see if there's any feedback.
Right, any questions for David from through to pages 9? Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Thank you, Councillor Lena.
Just query over the revenue and financing policy, where it references the recent work on forestry differentials. Is there any need to mention any other roads we might have that we could be thinking of applying? You know what I mean? I don't know if we need to, or we can just bring it to next year's annual plan and don't.
We only signalled in the consultation we took earlier in the year and in this OTP consultation around the forestry work and the meter policy work. That's not to say that we can continue with something else, but then we would be reviewing and changing the policy a third time. So we want to also get some efficiencies around that.
So if we could, I mean, just, I suspect we could, if we pushed in, January, say, hey, in the annual plan, we're going to come out, consult on this and look to add it. Just so as we talk about it. And that's my understanding, that we are open to add any other sort of road initiative onto that and go through a process.
We can't add a new rate without consulting on it through an annual plan process, and that's changing the revenue financing policy. And we'll do that if we introduce a differential on forestry, or and when we water metering and the structure of how we charge for water will alter, so that we are changing that in next year's annual plan. So you're saying add 3 things into that consultation information.
Yeah. If we so decide, I mean, whether it's 2 or 3 things, if we compare with an LTP, there's a few more things. I'm not intimidated by
At the moment, the funding for Masterton Road is not confirmed by NZTA. So until we include it in our LTP, our annual plan for year 2, it's not an issue. There's no point in setting any targeted rates if we don't actually have the work program.
Councillor Lena, then Councillor Livingston, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, David, you might be able to remind me of this one, but the housing for the elderly, despite the increases, they're still very significantly below market rentals. Is that still the case?
Yes.
Councillor
Thank you. Just around the outsourced function. So we're bringing legal services in-house. We're going to engage legal.
That's right, part-time legal counsel, and then we'll be relying a lot less on external.
Excellent.
So it's only 26 hours a week.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I'm guessing will save us money in the long run.
Yeah.
Secondly, just can you explain what waste minimisation? I can't say the word. What do they do again? Is that wrong?
Well, this is what you're researching.
Well, it's moved to this area,
Whose area is it? What is waste minimisation?
It's me and Karen.
Well, there is a waste minimisation management plan, which we signed up to.
Will they be part of the review and?
Yes, that role was a shared role across the 3 councils.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so
I told you
there's-
we'd get into the conversation, man. Councillor Johnson?
Just because I'm not sure, you know how we have the urban water supply with water meters, when we work out whatever pricing model, do we have to go to consultation for that? Because it says
Sorry, I
in,
just missed that first part.
it says in year one that we're committed to implement 2 changes to policy, one of which is urban water supply and the water meters. So once we've figured out a pricing model, or we want to test it, or however, do we have to go, do we go back to consultation?
Yeah, so we have to do the work. If we want to include the new financing and rating regime for next year, from July next year, we need to consult on it, and then we need to include that within the annual plan for consultation. So we would need to consult on it in about October, so that was why I was interested in Councillor Goodwin's proposal to add something else, because we have to do the work on it before October so that we can consult on it and have a draft policy to consult on.
So just to confirm, so that consultation on the water meters, the forestry consultation will be at the same time, or will it be separate?
We will, we haven't started on the review of the forest, so that's, we've got a lot to do. So my suspicion is that we may not be able to include that at this stage, but there's, there has also been other discussion with the other councils on potential work across the wide buffer. So that may extend timeframes.
Just my final question, sorry. So when we go out to consultation on the water supply, will we be consulting on anything else at that time, or are we just going out on one thing?
We will be consulting on the changes, proposed changes to the revenue and financing policy, which will incorporate
Anything that we've
the
got ready at
water
the time,
meter. Yeah.
or anything else?
Yeah. If there's anything else that you'd like us to crack on
No,
with.
I just wonder, because, you know, consultation, we'd rather do it once a year rather than 4 times a
Absolutely,
year.
and not change the revenue finance policy in another year.
Thank you.
Councillor Learning? Councillor Goodwin?
Just around the youth hub and skate park toilets, I, in my mind, I got to know this building quite well, I thought the budget was 320, have we spent 120 already? Suddenly now only 200,000.
So the budget was 3.
Yeah?
The youth hub, so we have in total 330,000.
Oh, yeah.
So we had, there was a budget of 300, and then we got a grant or a small contribution for 30,000.
Yeah, it just says 200,000 in here. It says CapEx projects moved to 24-25 include youth hub and skate park toilets, 200,000.
That will be David anticipating the fact that it won't be, the bulk won't be spent in this year. So we've ordered the
thank you.
toilets, so they've spent some of it, but the rest of the expenditure will be in the first year.
It's the artificial cut-off of the financial year end.
Yeah.
Next year's budget starts on 1 July, and if we spend, we've got to say how much is on this side, how much is on that side.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. I just had
That's
visions.
good.
We lost. I have one more question, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Please. And these items here, capital projects, we don't have to, these all agree, we're not doing any decisions on these, eh? We're just going.
No, they're just changes from what was in the draft.
Okay, cool.
And now, again, we haven't spent some of that money, we're moving it into next year. And it does have implications in the financial model. If we were going to loan fund it, the airport, for example, some of that we don't need to borrow now, so we're not going to incur interest costs next year until we do spend the money. So the financial model needs to be updated, and these are listed here so that there's a record of the change that we've made to the financial model that you've approved.
Thank you.
Councillor Goodwin, then Councillor Johnson.
So just to reiterate, that decision on toilets, for some reason I get the feeling there's 2 of them at the skate park. Will that come back to council? I mean, because if you've got 2 toilets there and there's 3 about 10 metres away, you must be about 20 toilets there, and we've got 1 that services the entire city. So will that toilets decision, in terms of their numbers, come back?
No.
No, it's part of the project.
It's part of the project, which has already been approved.
Is it 1 toilet or 2, or do we have 3 now?
No, I think it's a complex, a small complex of 2.
A small complex of 2?
It arrives assembled as 1 unit. There are 2 toilets, and we've chosen to make them both fully accessible. so that both members of our community that might have disabilities, but also parents with children, prams can easily access those. And we're required to have them as part of a facility of that type, because it is a public meeting room, we have to provide toilets as part of it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Nice one, sorry, there was a second part. The legal issue, and I know I did see an email about it, but I did want to ask, I mean, sometimes some legal advice differs from others.
Yep.
And the difference between a part-timer working in Masterton District Council could be very different to the standard of advice you get from some of the firms that I see we deal with. Is that...
Well, we have employed somebody from Simpson Greason that lives in the Wairarapa, so high calibre person for that role. We will still rely at times on advice from other firms outside. But as far as prosecutions and various enforcement and property conveyancing, all that stuff in-house is quite a big cost. We can do that all in-house at a good amount less. So.
Councillor Johnson?
Just on page 11.J, we make mention of 2 general rental properties that NGC has, which require expenditure. Firstly, I'm concerned that they're not already up to healthy home standards, because I would have thought timing of that is past. But secondly, it brings me back to the discussion that we often have about disposals, and I know Craig wants to pick up on this as well. But one of the pieces of work that I'd really love to see progressed is what we own and what we don't need and what we can get rid of, as in sell. Craig?
Yeah. Very much along the same themes I was looking to. So we have these 2 general rental properties here that are not part of our elderly housing portfolio. How many houses do we have in the general rental properties?
3 of them.
So I can confirm that that piece of work that you're talking about is actually on my work program for over the next financial period. So you will see some detailed analytics around exactly what we've got where, the state.
And I see the same too when we're looking at painting Tanui Hall. I know Tanui Hall is really well used, but part of that piece I'm hoping will include the halls.
Yes, I would expect we'd be able to deliver that up for all our buildings and facilities.
That's what you wanted to get.
And I'm aware that we do have 2 houses which are currently unoccupied as well. Will we be looking at the disposal of those as well?
Yes, we will.
Great, thank you.
And we have already started work on the policy for acquisition and disposal.
Councillor Leader?
Just make note of something I heard on the news last night. Thanks for expanding on those escape part toilets. It was kind of hard to understand that 2 toilets cost $100,000 each.
No, not each, sorry, Tom, councillor, that's the total.
200,000.
No, it's about $130,000 for the 2.
So it's the toilets, so it's the prices for 2 toilets. So it's I think it's $108,000 to buy the thing, and then there's some installation.
Oh, so how many toilets and what total?
2, and probably about 130,000 all up, including that's on the site, attachment to the ground, plumbed.
That's the stainless steel ones, I would know.
Yeah, because part of the thing is they have to be very, very hard wearing.
Yeah, and despite Councillor Goodwin, I think they probably are needed there, right on that premise. But I did note on the news last night in Rafah and Israel and Palestine, refugee camp, 1 toilet for 4,000. Anyway.
Okay, any further questions?
On discussion.
Sorry, any further questions? To the question, Dave, do you want to move on to the next one before we?
Yeah. So is there discussion time now?
Well,
we haven't moved anything.
If I just move on to the pages from 10, 11, 12, the list of items from A to Q, changes we're making to the budgets with better information. So it's timing usually, in that a project hasn't been finished, so we need to allow for the spend in the following year. There's some movement in the roading program. So Kane was adjusting numbers between maintenance and renewals and safety improvements, and that's affected the amount of subsidy we're getting. The cyclone recovery project, the spend there is the dollars to the end of this year versus the dollars next year are different from what we had in the budgets in March. So that's the nature of what the changes are. Insurance premiums, we've got more information around how much they're going up, so adjusted those. The overall effect of all of those changes is 0.4% less rates required. So the average rates increase in the model at the moment is 10.2%, but that's before the extra 40,000 for the positive ageing decision today. That's the only decision that changes next year's rates, because all of those other decisions impact future years in the 10-year plan. So the driver for the rates increase in year one is investment in water, more money going into water, including provision. There's a note here of 100,000 more we need to contribute to the Wellington delivery of a water services plan. That is legislation before Parliament at the moment, so we're anticipating that we are going to have to fund that ourselves. We won't be assisted by the government. The additional emergency management and a dedicated controller we've built in from year two, additional funding for that. So that the roading rates and the water costs are the drivers for the 10% rates increase, not the town hall, not the library project. We're very much in a catch-up mode in the roading area, and we're dealing with cyclone damage, and that's the biggest proportion of the increase in rates needed in year one. So open to any questions around that list of changes between A and Q.
So questions for Dave, from next week from pages 12 through to, or 10 to 12. Keep it up about.
Thank you very much for that information. We just talk then about how some of the decisions we've made today have had very little effect on the rates for next year, and that we're down now at 10.2. And you qualified it with roading and water have been the main drivers. What kind of percentage are we looking at? If we were to go back to basics, are we talking 1-2%?
Without those?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of other cost changes, like insurance, like contract adjustments that we're allowing for at the rate of inflation. So, yeah, there's all sorts of drivers for the costs going up that contribute to that 10%. Yes, yeah. So, and water is funded only by urban ratepayers, and roading going up is funded 70% by rural ratepayers. So, both of them increasing means there is a level of increase across both urban and rural, but rural rates increases at the large farm level are higher because a lot of the roading costs are based on their land values.
Can I just ask a follow-up question on this? So in the submissions we've had, you want?
Yeah.
The there's been a loud voice from the rural sector with regards to their increase in rates, which is based, as we appreciate, on increased values, but also on increased roading. What would the impact be, which I think is following from Craig's question, if we didn't increase the roading budget by as much? Do you see what I'm saying? Like that, like would increase.
We did have that figure, I think it was 9, kind of close to it.
Yeah.
2.3 million?
What?
So my question is,
quantify the question.
my question is, we had roading this level last year, right? So maybe we've gone up to this level because we've appreciated that we need to spend more money on our roads. Conversely though, that's impacted rural ratepayers more. So if we actually had our spending on a par for roads and maybe just had an inflationary adjustment, what difference would that make to our rural rates? Because you see what I'm saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You want your roads
Yeah,
fixed. but
Yeah,
yeah.
for a percentage really, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know the answer specifically, we need to go into the spreadsheets to work.
But the question is
Yeah.
that if you want your roads fixed,
Yeah.
your rates go up. If you don't want your rates to go up, you don't get your roads fixed.
So if we take $500,000 out of the roading budget, are we going to bring our rates down by 1%?
Remember, we're spending that $500,000 and we're getting half of it from NZTA. So your rates decreasing is 250,000, so it's less than 1%.
Okay, well that's
So
helpful.
the subsidy complicates things with the roading expenditure.
So the emotional decision is whether your rates go up, but also whether you do more work. And we've opted to choose to do more work.
Well, it's really trying to maintain the same level of service, but our costs have gone up. So we're not doing more work, we're spending more money, it's costing more to do the same level of maintenance
So
and
have we
renewals.
also had more damage that was unanticipated?
That's on top.
Yeah.
That cost is on top of our normal roading program, which has gone up. The step change upwards for the total roading program excludes those flood costs. Those are in addition.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Goodman?
So by adjusting those levels of service, I mean, if we took 2.5 million off the road, put it in the water, the town hall wouldn't have to raise. There might be a bit of trouble with water on the roads, but is that right? You just took the money off there?
It's a hypothetical question that it isn't in our current realm of delivery. We can't simply take a number off the bottom line. You tell me what service you don't want. You don't want the taps to run. We can stop spending on water.
Councillor Lennox?
Just under the campus projects, points again, the Kiwi kids own playgrounds in there again. I just have a real issue with the amount of money we're proposing to put forward for scoping and design. Like, that's $220,000 on scoping for a playground. When, you know, I'll be here with my mate Tim at school, like, we have a pretty amazing playground. I'm not saying it's nowhere near up to the kids' own standard, but we would never ever forfeit hundreds of thousands of dollars in scoping for something. I just find that a really, just because we've been told that's what it's going to cost, I just don't feel it's right to agree to it because it's a lot of money.
We originally in the draft had a budget provision in year 4 to contribute to the playground rebuild. The Rotary Club came to us and said, we're looking at this project, we've got these concepts, we've got this architect who's got some ideas, we want to keep this project moving. Can you put something in to do that? So we said we need to allow some of that money that was in year 4 to be spent in year 1 and 2.
Does it have to be that much?
It doesn't, but we don't know what the number is, but we do need to have something to contribute to keep the project moving.
What was WSP's proposal for their thing?
Well, they haven't proposed anything to us because they've been dealing with the Rotary Club. So we may not even use them, but the Rotary Club have made that contact. And we're working in partnership with them, so we've changed the budget numbers to allow us the ability to be part of the project going forward.
How much is it, sorry, Scott?
220,000 over 2 years.
Scope.
Yep, scoping into some way. It's a hell of a lot of money, sorry. It's the price of the youth hub.
I think we need to remember though that the Rotary Club have to find, to make that work, the Rotary Club probably have to find 2 or 3 million themselves. So it's problematic.
But in saying that, you can get the scoping done and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
And who's paid for that?
Exactly, and also from the feedback I've had since this was discussed through submissions was, who says we need it? Why are these people saying we need a new playground?
Oh, it is over, they have gone through a process where it is tired and Friends of the Park.
I just don't think the ratepayers, I know they're not going to be having a few decisions today, but I think 220,000 over 2 years is a huge expense for scoping and some drawings.
Are you saying it's not fit for purpose?
So we did try.
It's,
Get a survey done.
the playground is definitely like end of life. It's something that needs to be done, so not debating the figure for the person you're talking about, but it's the premier playground and it's end of life and some form of replacement needs to happen.
What does end of life mean?
Okay, well Kim's got a suggestion here.
It's timber and aspects of it are deteriorating.
Yeah,
The cost to
we're
maintain.
literally in patch-up mode and decommissioning bits of it. And it is one of the things that comes with the playground that is built almost entirely out of timber. Which
Going out of school.
It's so cool. I don't think we should be spending that much money on scoping.
Can you sweat the
Yeah,
asset?
listen please.
not without a few splinters.
I think also that's a lot of money. And my thought is we just allocate 100,000 and we find someone that can scope well within that. That's
Yeah,
what we
but
do.
like a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Roach.
Mention's been made of the roading reductions. I think it's important that we think of the rural ratepayers. The roading's the only thing they get from the council, really, and they're paying huge rates. So it would be devastating to reduce any roading costs in the rural.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Councillor Mayor.
I just read pool vehicle replacement due to late delivery of the preferred model. Can you just refresh my memory as to what the preferred model is?
There's two we're currently replacing. One of them can be delivered this month before the end of the financial year, and that's a Mitsubishi Ute to replace this next trail, I think. And the other is replacing an electric vehicle with a hybrid. I think it's a Toyota.
How long have you had the electric?
Further discussion?
Yep.
Councillor Nelson?
Just a few comments about the report. Thank you, David, for it. Just on page 5, there's the comments about affordability, which is raised by many ratepayers or submitters. And I don't think it's been recognised at all in the majority of the decisions we've made today. There's been a lot of talk about it and sympathy, but that means nothing. And what really means something is actions, and we've taken actions to increase the burden on our ratepayers, I strongly believe. There's a comment about intergenerational equity on page 7.
At this stage, we're asking questions. Can we need to put the recommendation before we get into discussion?
No, I just got to ask about discussion.
Of course, but...
Yeah, I said, usually I can make discussion.
Oh, okay, well, I said that, okay.
And I think it's, intergenerational equity can also be intergenerational folly. So we're again making decisions today put a burden on people in the future, but we're treating it like it's an equity thing. It might be equity in terms of burden. And also rates of arrears, which I know Brett's raised and David mentioned again before, but it is incredibly high, 1,111 people. And it's great to see the faces of those people instead of just a number, so we actually saw who those people are and the burden that they're under. And I truly believe that the decisions we've made have not reflected so many of the submissions made, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on a lot of people who are truly struggling.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, that does make me think. Imagine if, as I've seen happen in this chamber before, I'm not suggesting the whole 1,111. There'll be quite a few of those people that will sit in here in tears, telling us how tough life is. But
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin.
we only do that sometimes.
Could we move to the recommendations on page 4? Somebody prepared to move
Sorry,
those?
can I just interrupt?
Oh, we've just gone past 6 hours for the meeting, so we have to move a resolution that we continue the meeting. Somebody prepared to move that?
Sure.
Councillor Lynch, all those in favour?
Aye.
You?
Change the clock.
Okay, back to the
Councillor.
recommendations on page 4. Somebody prepared to move those?
Just-
Move to Councillor
No,
Lennox.
no, 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 I'm not moving, I just need to ask a question. So are we changing that playground thing to 100?
Yes. So year
Is that how it
2
is?
of 120 will be removed.
Yep,
So off that bullet point.
okay. Does that need to be part of this decision, like motion?
Yes.
Just give Harriet a second. It just needs to be.
Harriet? There's a bullet point under on page 12 of 17, and it says kids own playground. The last paragraph, the last sentence. Can you remove year 2 120k off that, please?
We just say $200,000.
Out of reserves.
It depends whether the total project contribution, we took it out of the provision for a project contribution. So if it was 1.5 million in year 4, we dropped that by 220,000 and moved it timing wise earlier. So the council contribution to the project signalled to the Rotary Club was 1.5.
But it's still up for discussion though.
It is,
Yeah.
it is.
And it's not 200,000 off rates.
No.
It's 200,000 out of
From reserves contributions, from development
which is
contributions.
possibly costing 5 cents a year.
Well-
Rateable property.
If we've received development, reserves contributions from
Or
developers,
20 cents a year.
Okay. Could we move to page 4, please? We are now moving, there is a number, to the recommendations, number 5 on the recommendation will be confirms fees and charges. The council confirms fees and charges, we're just adding those words. Somebody prepared to move that recommendation? Well, I'll move the recommendation, seconded Councillor Nelson. Any discussion?
Hang on, Harriet's still writing that, sorry.
Confirm the
Sorry.
fees and charges that were included in the long-term plan consultation document. Just to be really clear.
Well, that's been written.
Or the schedule of fees and
Asked
charges.
that we change we took out we're going to relook at the bridge to the Park Island. You know, that was on the,
Yes, it was really expensive.
54-ton trucks, we were going to remove it down to,
So that was downsized significantly as a result of that little service workshop. So it's a much less figure and a less engineered bridge.
And made up for it.
Okay, we see the recommendations. The recommendations have been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion before I put the motion? I'll put the motion, the recommendations on page 4. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, that is the end of our meeting for today. Thank you so much, councillors, for your attention and for the very feisty and all, well, not so much feisty, but very constructive conversations we've had. Not everybody, obviously, this has happened so often in my council meetings I've been at, not everybody's going to agree with decisions made around this table, but I think they've been made in good faith, and I congratulate you on the way you handled yourself. And I'd also like to, at the end of all this long-term plans consultation, to really congratulate the staff on the extremely hard work you guys have done right through this, and for the way that you've presented it, the way you've communicated it. I think it's been a very successful process, so thank you so much.
And further to that, I mean, what you're saying, I think the majority of councillors are probably happy with today, even though I'm not one of them. And probably the minority of residents, especially submitters, are going to be happy with today.
I'll disagree with that, but that's an opinion personally.
I'll give them your
I think
address.
final word could be the carrot.
Okay, let's have the colour here.
Brilliant, we're taking the West 9 million out of the program.
Tua mātou mahi mō te rua, manahatia mai mātou kāpua, o mātou ho, o mātou whana, au ki te awa. Thanks so much, folks.